Greetings, friends and future friends. Today's video is on the Korg Nautilus. Now, what I want to show you today is how to use the Multitrack Sequencer in the Korg Nautilus. But I'll be honest with you. If I'm doing any heavy MIDI tracking, I usually do it in my software. Then I connect my software through a MIDI cable into the Korg Nautilus. Then you can bring up a combination, assign channels and effects, and do all kinds of cool stuff. But I want to show you a little bit on how to use that multi-track sequencer in the Korg Nautilus. So let's get in the studio and see how those things work. We now have the Korg Nautilus all started up. We have the mode select button clicked, and let's go to sequencer. Now, what we have in this screen is similar to a combination. You have a navigational bar up top, which gives you play, stop, record, and all that. Then you have this right here, which selects the song you're going to be working with. And this is test 01, the one I created. And you could go through whatever you have selected, or some things are actually preset in there. You could work with a song that's already there. And that is what you select your song. Then you have your status and play modes of all the tracks, your volumes, and you have MIDI tracks 1 through 8, 9 through 16, and because this sequencer offers audio, you have audio 1 through 8 and audio 9 through 16. What we're going to talk about today is basically the MIDI tracks. Now, the important part of this screen is right here. When we click on that, this is very important and something you need to be aware of what it's selected when you're working in this sequencer, because this is going to dictate what tracks are being recorded. So right now it's on track 1, and what track 1 is a drum track. What I've done here in this sequence is I've laid down 2 drum tracks, a bass guitar track, and a keyboard track. In fact, let's play it. Pretty cool little riff. But if we go here and we select 1, now we're going to be recording on track 1, which is where I recorded the snare drum and the kick drum. And if I play down on D3, that's my kick drum, and C3 is actually the snare. Then on this track, if we go to track 2, what I did here is, this is something I like to do, is because we recorded the snare and the kick drum on track 1, we recorded the hi-hat on track 2. So if we actually play this back, solo it. And later on, you're going to see why that's an advantage to doing that. That way you can lay down the kick drum and EQ it a certain way, and the snare drum and the bass drum. So if we actually went over here, back up to that screen and click this to 3, now you can use your wheel, or you can go over here and select and go say, click on MIDI track 3. Now that's the bass. Cool. And if we selected track 4, that would be the organ. And so on. And it's basically really simple. You select the track you want to record, you record it, and you move on. So now let's record a track. And what we'll do is we'll come over here and we'll select track 5. That way we don't disturb the sequence we have already. And basically, we've selected channel 5. It's on the Nautilus Grand. And what we should have is... Sounds cool. And now what we're going to do is go over and make sure everything's okay. We're on 5. We make sure that we rewind this back to the first track, or first measure. So now you can turn the metronome on and off. If you hit record, you have the metronome on. And if you turn it off, it doesn't have anything playing. I like to have it on. Then what I like to do is hit the record, count in 4, hit the play button. The play button, when you hit the play button after record, it's going to count in 4. And it kind of gets you set up. So let's see if we can do this. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, stop. All right, so now we recorded 8 tracks or 8 measures of that song. Let's play it back. Sounds cool. Uh-oh. Where's the piano? The piano's not going through. I don't hear the piano anymore. Well, that's another screen we're going to go to. Now, the piano is not playing anymore after 8 measures. Why? Because we recorded that at 8 measures, and the rest of the sequence we recorded at 12. So what we do is we go to this next screen down here on the bottom called MIDI track loop. And we go over here and we hit 5. Make sure 5 is on repeat. And then I got to make sure that we repeat from 1 through 8. What we're going to do is go to 8 because we only recorded at 8 measures. And this is where you create a loop. So basically my sequence is 12 measures. Now the keyboard is only an 8 measure. And if we play it, go back to start. And now what's happening here is these first 4 tracks are looping on 12 measures and the keyboard track is looping on 8. A very helpful tool right here when you're creating loops or things you want to create a sequence that have a loop in them. So now let's go back to the mixer. And we can actually go back in here and hit volume and mix this keyboard, bring it down maybe a little bit more. And there's one mistake in there, but this is a tutorial, so we're not going to be too worried about it. But we want to go down through. I've already explained what MIDI track loop does. And then recording setup. Here's another important part, because this is going to set up how you record your tracks. Overwrite, overdub, manual punch-in, auto punch-in, loop all tracks. This is things when you're recording. So overwrite, when you record a track, as soon as you start recording, you're recording over that track. So again, if you have 12 measures of something, you record 8 measures, you're going to record over that first 8 measures with the new stuff. Then you have, and sometimes depending on what you've selected, when you go to record, it's going to actually erase that whole track, depending on how you have the setup. But overwrite, it overwrites what you had in there. And then the overdub, this would mean if we selected the overdub, then we would record over top of what's already previously recorded. And that's pretty easy to understand. And the manual punch-in and all that. So then we go to auto punch-in. Auto punch-in is basically when you're going to select an area that you want to punch in. So on MIDI track 5, we wanted measure so-and-so to so-and-so. We would set that up. We go measure 10 to measure 12, and then you would assign that, and then it would automatically record. You could be playing, and it'll automatically record in that area, and then just punch in that area. And basically all the other stuff. ARP and drum, we're not going to get into this tutorial, and sampling either. We'll get into it in another tutorial. And then tone adjust down here at the bottom. This is go back and watch the video I did on tone adjust. This is an area where you can select buttons and switches. You can create sliders, all these different sliders. You can select switches and create all these different switches to do different things in your sequence. Go back and watch this because all the buttons that are on the deck of the Kronos are actually here in this screen called Tone Adjust in the Nautilus. And it's a pretty helpful screen to use. Okay, we're back on the mixer screen. And you have your volume mixer and all that. But I want you to go up here and take a look at this. We go up here and we click on that. There's all these different things that you can do, rename the song, exclusive solo, copy from song, load template song, save template song. If we go hit that, we're going to save this. And of course I saved it as a sequence, so we don't do that again. But there's other things in here, edit program, all these different things you need to be aware of. You can actually copy something from a combination and bring it into the sequencer, or copy from a program. All this different things that you can go through here. There's a lot of stuff in here. We're not going to go through all of it, but I just wanted you to know that it's there. And let's exit out of this. So now I want to show you some other things. If we hit page, we're in the sequencer and we hit page, it brings us up to this screen. And the first thing is EQ, X, Y controllers. And basically what this is right here, 16 tracks of MIDI that you can EQ. And you can see I have the cymbals turned up a little high, the 12. This would be my snare and drum track, my cymbal track. Over here would be my bass guitar, my organ, and my keyboard track. And these are all things that are going on. Now, right here, you're going to see this button that says bypass input trim. You're going to see that if we go, and let's go back to solo the drum track. We'll solo that, and then we'll go back to page, EQ. Now, if we touch this and play it back, you notice when we tap on that and light that little icon up, what it does is it bypasses this input. Now you can see right there we're at 99%. So it's actually an attenuator. Like on a mixer, you could turn up the gain of the channel. So right now the gain of that channel is at 99, which when you're dealing with velocities of hits and stuff, it's better to have the signal up high. So, but if you want to bypass that, you would tap on that little icon right there, that little button. And again, if you tap on this, we could bring this down if we don't want it to be so loud, or bring it up. So that's one thing that's, if you see something, you're wondering why a volume control isn't working or the sound isn't there, check this first, because that's a big thing. And also because this sequencer offers 16 audio tracks, you can click down here to this screen. Now you have a 16 channel EQ board here for your 16 audio tracks. So if you're recording some audio along with your MIDI sequence, you could do the same thing. You can bypass the input or the gain, but then you can EQ it. Then the X and Y volumes. This is going to be setting up the joystick. There's a lot of stuff in here. Basically, I'm leaving everything stock. And then same with the Y and C controllers, all different things in here. If you want to get in depth, the manual has a lot of stuff on this. But basically what happens to each sequence, the way they're set up, seems to work good. X, Y envelope, same thing. And then the controllers is another thing. If you're on the controller window on the bottom here, what that's going to do is assign the knobs to do different things. You can do that, or the two switches by the joystick, you can adjust there too. And I'll go back to the MIDI EQ. And that is what we have on the EQ and XY controllers. Now I want to show you MIDI filters and zones. So we go there. Now what you have here is your first MIDI filter. And you can see right here, enable damper pedal. I turned it off for the two drum tracks and the bass track. So in here are a lot of screen selections you can make. Enable program change, enable aftertouch, all these different things right here.
you can tell that MIDI channel not to enable. So again, right here, enable damper pedal. No, I don't want the damper pedal to work on my bass guitar and my 2 drum tracks, so I disabled them. Then you have MIDI filter 2, which is same thing as a combination and everything else. You know, you can real-time control of knobs 1 through 6. And then MIDI filter 3 is the 2 switches over by the joystick and the foot switch. And then this is something you want to look at, because if you're using the foot switch to do something in your track and it's not working, before you get too hastily figuring out where the problem is, go into this menu here and see, is that foot switch enabled or disabled? You can see we have a foot switch and a foot pedal. You know, and the Korg Nautilus has 3 inputs for foot controllers: a damper pedal, a foot switch, and a foot pedal, and other things. So, and then keyboard zones, that's kind of self-explanatory. What we have here, you can see already on the drum track, I went from C4, C-1 to C4. And, you know, you can, if I'm clicked on the C4, exit out of that, you can see I can change it. You can see how the screen changes. And basically, I put that on C4. So basically, the MIDI input from the keyboard will not work above C4. And you can set that up. And velocity zones, usually I keep the velocity zones all about the same at 0 to 127. There might be a time where I want the slap bass. Now, if you're working on the slap bass and you want it to have more slap, you would make it, you know, make the velocity stay higher. But that's all things, usually 0 to 127, and then I change the dynamics of that sound with the way I play. Now this next selection, called Track Edit, brings you up to this screen. Again, I like working in my computer and then sending the MIDI signal to the combination, because this is a really tight space to work in. But there's a lot of things you can do. Right off the bat, you can see the navigation screen is right up in there. You can have the metronome. Everything's still right up there. And you can see the events taking place. Each one of these little rectangles is a measure. And if we go to MIDI track name, you can actually rename these tracks. Same with the audio tracks. You can rename them. And that's pretty helpful. But let's go back to Track Edit. Now, there's a lot of things you can do in here. And what we can do is go up to the menu, and you can see all the different things you can do. You know, we can MIDI event edit. We can memory status, all this stuff. Copy track. If we want to copy track, it's going to say, okay, copy track, MIDI track 5 to, and then where do you want that thing to go? You know, and cancel. Then also remember, when you're dealing with this track edit, whatever this screen, this is your most important screen. You can see now that white line going the whole way across that is now on MIDI track 1. If we bring it to 5, now it's down here on 5. So be aware of what this is selected, because that's the track you're going to work on. Now, if we go over here and we go, let's take an erase track. Now, this is a very important thing right here. Make sure these are not selected, because you do not want to erase all tracks and all MIDI tracks. You just want to erase track 5. And you can see that that's on track 5. If I cancel that and I go over here and I make that 4 and then go over and say erase track, now you're going to see erase MIDI track 4. This is very important. We're going to cancel that and go back here. And we're going to go to erase track and make sure nothing's clicked. Actually, we want to go over here first. I'm going to click on that. I thought I clicked on that. Track 5. Then we're going to go over to here, erase track. And we're going to erase track 5. And if you see, track 5 is there. And if we go OK, now track 5 is gone. Now, one thing, something very important. When you do things in this screen, you only have basically one undo. So I erased that track, but I don't want to erase it. I want it back. you can come back up here to the screen and do compare. Sequencer compare, and it brings it back. Now the takeaway and the important part of this is when you edit stuff in here, there's no undo, but you have actually one undo step back. So if I erase this track and then I go and I copy another track and I hit compare, the compare will only work on the last function that you did. So make sure when you're in here editing, when you do things, like if we're erasing a track, make sure you see erase MIDI track 5 and you're doing what you want, because there's not a lot of redo in here. And basically, there's all these different functions in here. If we wanted to copy that track, quantize it, or erase a measure, when you go to erase a measure, you can actually select a measure. Okay, from measure 1 to what measure? And, and then what you can do also is erasing those measures from all tracks, all MIDI tracks. So if you want to erase that measure from just one track or whatever. And that stuff, there's a lot of stuff here to do, but, it's just a thing, moving measures, all that. A lot of stuff you can do in here. Now, I like working in the computer. You can work easier. You can see the individual notes easier. But you have a lot of functionality in this track edit to do things. All right, now let's look at IFX. If you've gone back and watched a couple of my videos, I've actually done a video on IFX and all the effects you can do. And it's basically the same thing. Right now we have the drum tracks going through 1 through 6. But if we look at the drums, we insert an effect, we can see there's no effect on it, so it's really not doing anything. But basically we're routing the effects. So let's just take, for example, let's put on track 5. Let's go to track 5. And that's track 5. And let's go over here and create IFX 6. And then we're going to go over here to insert effects. Go to 6. We're going to turn it on for first thing. And let's put a reverb on it, a nice hall reverb. Go OK. Now on that piano, we have reverb. And if we go over here to the effects, remember, insert effects, here's the simple basic principle. The routing shows you where that channel is going to go, which effects loop it's going to go into. Insert effects will allow you to select the effect that's going to be in that loop. And then IFX 1 through 12 is where you adjust that. So we see we're on IFX 6. And if we go back to MIDI routing, go back to the beginning. Really cool. We go down here and make it dry. No reverb. Really cool. And that's how you add an effects loop into your sequence. And again, you can go through, now you have 12, if you go over here 1 through 12, you actually have 12 different inserts that you can insert an effect in. And you just add the effect, then go over to IFX 12 and adjust the parameters of that effect, and back to MIDI routing. So basically, it's really simple. MIDI routing shows you what track is going to what effect. The insert effect is showing you what that effect is. And then you can select, like if we have up here, 1 through 5, or actually, 1 through 5, there is no effects, so it says no effects. And then we go to our 6th, the one we added, there's the hall reverb. And that's how you create a IFX loop in your MIDI sequence. Next thing we're going to look at is track parameter. Now, track parameter is pretty much basically set up. It's like a combination. You have your MIDI channels. You have whether it's coming in from, external, internal. I have it on both. And then it's your MIDI channels. And then your oscillator. We're running a program, and basically I keep everything the same. There's not much I change in here. Pitch. This is one that is very important and one I use. So if I wanted to take that piano and drop it down an octave and now play it, So this is one that I use a lot because you can change the pitch of that sequence, of that part in the sequence. And if we wanted to, we can even actually go back and make it into a seventh. If we had it, make it to the fifth, which would change the dynamics of that song. So in this, again, back to track parameter. Go back to track parameter, MIDI, oscillator, whatever. I don't really use that much, but the pitch I use a lot because you can change the pitch of that melody. And actually what you can do is actually record two melodies side by side, change the pitch, and you have a nice harmony. Delay, this is more of a delay of the song itself, you know. Time signature, it's not really a delay like a multi-tapping delay in an effects. Wave and sequence, we're going to get into that later. Same with the audio input and same with the audio track delay. You can have a delay on the track if you want to give it a little more stereo spread. But again, out of all these, go to, again, I want to show you this because it's very important. Track parameters, then pitch. And now you can adjust the pitch of each one of those MIDI channels. All right, pattern, RPPR. To be honest with you, I really don't use this. This is bringing in patterns and how to set it up, how to set up your patterns and pattern name. Maybe later on I'll do a video on it, but it's something I hardly ever use, so I'm really not that familiar with it. But maybe if you guys want to know, I'll look into it. But basically it's bringing in other patterns of other songs. The last thing on this screen is MFX and TFX. And basically, as I've said before in the other videos, are basically the master effects coming out of everything. Now, because you're running a sequence and you want to bring different effects to different tracks, there really is, you can see there's no effects on any of them. Matter of fact, if you go to Master Effects 1, there's nothing. Master Effects 2, Total Effects 1, Total Effects 2. So basically in this screen of the Master Effects and Total Effects, there's really nothing going on here, but you could add a reverb if you wanted to make your sequence sound like it was in a hall or a different environment, the same. You could do it right here, and that would be right here, Master Effects and Total Effects. Now there's one more thing I want to show you. If we want to get this sequence we have written and take it somewhere else, you know, create a file and export it out of the Korg Nautilus here. And we got a nice little sequence. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Mode Select and Media. And you can see there's nothing there. Go to Mode Select, back to our sequencer. Now, I'm not going to go into too much of a detailed explanation of sampling. I'm just going to show you this real quick so you can figure a way to take and create a wave file from this sequence and export it. So we go to Sampling, and we go to Sample Setup. Make sure it's left and right. Source bus is on left and right. Sample 16-bit to disc, stereo, that's all good. Then audio input, make sure these are all on left and right. That's all on left and right. Back to sampling setup. Then go audio setup. Make sure we have this on 2-channel mix to disc. Everything's looking good. Now, what we want to do is watch this meter right here. If we don't see any this thing lighting up and moving, then we know we're not getting sampling. But we'll push this, hit the play button, and we can see that this is lighting up. Now, all we have to do is go back here and hit the sampling. stop our sampling, stop our sequencer. And now if we go to mode select, go to media, we're going to see now we have take 006 wave file. If we click on that and we play it, so now you have this take 006 wave file, and all you have to do is put your flash drive in, export it to your flash drive, and then you could bring it into any of your software. So again, real quick, I want to go over that because this is a good way to get your stuff out. Sequencer. Set up your sequencer. Go to setup, left and right bus, 16-bit. You want to save it to disk. You want to audio input, make sure these things kind of flip off and on, but make sure they're on left and right. Then go over to audio setup, make sure that's on 2-channel mix to disc, back on, and away you go. Then all you have to do is hit sampling, repeat your sequence, get it ready to go, play the sequence, make sure it's working. And now all you got to do is start sampling. Stop that, stop the sequencer. And if we go to media, you're going to see now we have take 07. And if we play it, we know that we kind of started late, so that's how you can take a sequence that you created in the sequencer and export it out as a WAV file. You go into sampling and do that. But another thing I wanted to mention is if we wanted only to record the drum tracks, if we went and muted these tracks out and then played it, now we're only going to have the drums playing. So what does that mean? That means that when you export or play that sequence or whatever's playing is what that sampler is going to pick up. So if you wanted all the instruments and we had everything going, we'd have it like that. But if we wanted to mute out everything and just play the drums, we could mute out the 3 instruments and just have the drums. And then you would create a sample from that, which would be a WAV file that you could export to your software. So there you have it, the Multitrack Sequencer in the Korg Nautilus. Now, I don't think I'm going to change the way I record and produce music because I still like having it in my Alienware and then bringing that into the Nautilus. In other words, I run through a MIDI connection and I can play all the sounds and all my keyboards with my main computer. But if you're scratching out an idea or you're thinking about an idea, it's pretty easy to do. All you got to do is come over here, select the sound, then select the track you're going to record, hit the record button, and now you're recording a little track. So for coming up with ideas, I think this is a pretty good little tool in here. And the more I've used it in this tutorial, I found that it's not that hard to use. Basically, just select a track and record. So I think this sequencer, to me, is a thumbs up.
So I hope this video gave you some insight on how to use the Multitrack Sequencer in the Korg Nautilus. It's a great creative tool. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. You'll help us grow the channel. That way we can bring you more cool stuff. So take care, my friends, and thanks for watching.